Good morning. I'd like to call this informational meeting of the House Energy Committee to order at 10:32. Nick, would you please call the roll?
Chair Fiedler.
Here.
Representative Boyd.
On leave.
Representative Brown.
On leave.
Representative Serrato.
On leave.
Representative Davidson.
On leave.
Representative Donahue.
On leave.
Representative Friel.
On leave.
Representative Dural.
Here.
Representative Ingalls.
On leave.
Representative McAndrew.
On leave.
Representative Pielli.
Here.
Representative Rusnock.
On leave.
Representative Steele.
On leave.
Representative Venkat. Chair Causer.
Here.
Representative Armanini. Representative Barton.
On leave.
Representative Cook.
On leave.
Representative Ham.
Online.
Representative Kale.
On leave.
Representative Kephart.
On leave.
Representative Mihalik.
On leave.
Representative Rapp.
On leave.
Representative Stambaugh.
Here.
Representative Warner.
On leave. I'm sorry. Correction. Online.
Representative Williams.
And online.
Attendance is recorded. Proceed, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you to our members, our testifiers, and our guests for attending this Monday morning informational hearing on small modular nuclear reactor technology. As we've discussed in the past, with energy prices spiking for our constituents back home and a potential supply shortfall in the PJM region on the horizon, I think we need to be open to all technologies we can and have an open mind, especially about some of the newer technologies that could help the Commonwealth keep the lights on, especially if those technologies produce near zero carbon emissions. I'm excited for today's hearing. SMRs seem especially promising because they can provide a lot of power 24/7, and they may be able to be built with much lower capital costs than traditional light water reactors. Tomorrow, this committee anticipates having a voting meeting on House Bill 2017, a bill from Rep. Giral that would give DEP discretion to lower fees for small modular reactors. So I am eager to learn more about this new technology from our testifiers and to give committee members a chance to ask questions. Chair Causer, do you have any opening remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking forward to the information presented. It's a topic that I don't claim to know a whole lot about, so I'm looking forward to learning from you folks, and thank you for being here and joining us today.
Thank you, Chairman. Today we have 3 experts with us to educate us and to answer our questions on small modular nuclear reactor technology. Our testifiers include Allison Hahn, Technical Advisor for New Nuclear at the Nuclear Energy Institute, Sola Talabi, President of Pittsburgh Technical, and Mary Kurash, Senior Program Manager for the AP300 Westinghouse. And also, Robert Hayes, Assistant Professor at NC State. Testifiers, thank you for joining us. Please know that members already have in their packets your written testimony. Please summarize as much as possible. And then we'll be able to get to question and answers from the members. We will hold all questions for our panelists until the testimony is complete. Ms. Hahn, would you please begin?
Good morning. You hear me okay? Thank you. Chair Fiedler, Chair Causer, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Allison Krager-Hahn. I am a technical advisor for New Nuclear at the Nuclear Energy Institute, where I am focused on supporting the deployment of advanced nuclear. Before I start, advanced nuclear, it differs from organization to organization, depending on who you're speaking to, but it was defined in the 2018 Nuclear Energy Innovation Capabilities Act as, in part, a nuclear fission reactor with significant improvements compared to reactors operating on December 27th, 2020. So when I say advanced nuclear, I am including reactors that include light water, molten salt, liquid metal, high temperature gas. It also includes reactors that use low enriched uranium, which is the same fuel that's used in today's existing fleet. It also includes advanced fuels like high assay, low enriched uranium in forms like TRISO fuel, if you've heard of that, tristructural isotopic. It also includes metal fuel and liquid fuel in some designs as well. The range of sizes also varies greatly. It goes from a few hundred kilowatts up to a gigawatt size. And so really just the full spectrum when we say advanced nuclear. So our existing fleet has operated reliably for decades, filling a critical role with near perfect capacity factors, operating night and day, good weather and bad, and we hope those reactors continue to operate for another 40 plus years. But our energy grid has changed since those plants were built in the 60s and 70s, and advanced nuclear reactors will be able to more readily respond to those needs. Because of the smaller size and advanced fuels, many of them are able to be sited closer to the end user, which is perfect for smaller grids and requires less transmission and distribution infrastructure. Advanced reactors can also operate at much higher temperatures than the existing fleet, which makes them perfect for our industrial sector that needs clean, high-temperature heat to decarbonize their operations. And then lastly, the smaller, what we call microreactors, can be transportable to support remote communities that rely on diesel fuel year-round, and communities that have been hit by a disaster and need quick, reliable energy. These designs also use advanced manufacturing, fabrication, and construction techniques, allowing either the reactors, the modules of the reactors, or components of them to be manufactured in a controlled factory setting instead of kind of stick building the reactors like we did in the 60s and 70s. Because of these advantages, we're seeing unprecedented, significant support from across all levels of government, from federal to state and even local communities. On the federal side, the nuclear industry has seen steady support for the past decade in private-public partnerships and research development in advanced fuels. In the last year or so, we've seen legislation to modernize the Nuclear Regulatory Commission through the ADVANCED Act. And then in May, the administration signed 4 executive orders focused on increasing the amount of domestic nuclear capacity through upgrades in the existing fleet, utilizing DOE authorities to demonstrate pre-commercial designs, enhancing the commercial regulatory process to make it more efficient, deploying reactors on military bases, maximizing domestic fuel production, bolstering our nuclear energy workforce, and then lastly, expanding the opportunities for U.S. nuclear exports. This includes announcements in the past few months to authorize 11 reactors and 5 fuel line projects to demonstrate their technologies at various sites across the United States. And then on the state level, we continue to see a large amount of nuclear activity. Currently, we're tracking 350 pieces of legislation across 46 states. This year, 7 states began the process of conducting SMR feasibility studies, bringing the total to over 25 state studies. And states are continuously looking for ways to incentivize nuclear technology and the broader supply chain. Some examples, New York is currently looking at how to continue its zero emission credit program. Indiana recently passed a bill to provide incentives for the development of nuclear manufacturing within the state. Tennessee appropriated $60 million for its Nuclear Energy Supply Chain Investment Fund. And then lastly, Texas appropriated $350 million and established a nuclear energy fund to encourage the development of advanced reactors in the state. With that, I will end, and also thank you again for giving me this opportunity today.
Thank you so much. I do have some questions, but I will follow the rule I set out in the beginning and hold them until after everyone has spoken. Mr. Talabi, if you'll go ahead, please.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Dr. Shalat Talabi. I'm the president of Pittsburgh Technical. Pittsburgh Technical is a nuclear consulting practice based out of Western PA. We are actually not located quite in Pittsburgh. We're right outside Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Technical supports federal agencies, national laboratories, and reactor developers, including vendors such as NuScale, Nuclearis, GE, for their BWRX 300 SMR. My work also includes nuclear energy policy. I served on the National Academies Engineering Committee for National Academies of Engineering Committee on Advanced Nuclear Power, where there was a federally mandated study to try to determine how the U.S. could essentially catch up with some of the advances that we've been seeing in the international sector, with memoranda of understanding being signed between China, Russia, and other countries, and it appeared that the U.S. had a larger role to play internationally. Regarding small modular reactors, in addition to the remarks already shared today, I will address issues related to safety and also workforce development. First, on safety, while today's existing reactors have a very strong safety record, the new generation of SMRs and advanced reactors are designed to be even safer. Some of the well-known historical incidents, such as 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, and the Chernobyl accidents, are essentially caused by something called a loss of coolant accident, which is no longer credible for a lot of these reactors. Essentially, for those accidents, what occurred was typically a pipe that may have broken, but in these new reactors, those pipes have been eliminated. Also, with the advanced reactors and SMRs, we have a feature that's called passive safety. One way to appreciate this is if you've, driving around, we see perhaps cars that may have been overheated parked on the side of the road, but you never see a motorcycle overheated parked on the side of the road, and that's because motorcycles are passively cooled. They don't require an active mechanical system like a radiator to cool them. So that's an example of passive safety. As you ride, it's small enough that it can be air-cooled. Similarly, with these small modular reactors and advanced reactors, they're small enough that they can actually take advantage of passivity. And so they use features like natural convective cooling. It's the reason why your basement is cool and the attic is hot. So such features, these small modular reactors, microreactors, are able to take advantage of those types of phenomena. Regarding workforce development, we really are especially in Pennsylvania, we have a huge opportunity to take advantage of the expected significant job growth in this sector. The U.S. Department of Energy conducted a study about 2 years ago. It's called the Liftoff Study for Nuclear. And what it estimates is that we need about 20 gigawatts of new reactor development to keep up with the demand for energy. And so that's about per year. So that's about 20, eventually about 20 Westinghouse AP1000 reactors potentially being built in a couple of years. And I mean, that's quite a challenge. So that's a lot of jobs. It's estimated that in addition to the about 100,000 jobs that we currently have, we might require about 375,000 more jobs. So there's an opportunity to bring a lot of those jobs to Pennsylvania. However, these jobs are not going to be one-for-one replacements or necessarily similar to all the jobs that we currently have. And that's because the deployment scenarios for SMRs will be quite different from how the existing reactors are deployed. For some of these SMRs, they'd be co-located with industrial facilities, so we might have some new types of accidents where the industrial facility could initiate an accident at the SMR and vice versa. So there's, while these SMRs do retire a lot of the historical challenges, they do also introduce some new risks. Hence, the workforce development and training needs to appreciate the differences that these SMRs have. And with that, I will pass it on to Mary.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Fiedler and Chair Kausler. Thank you very much for having me here today and members of the committee. I'm so excited to be here and tell my kids that I got to testify in the Capitol. So with that, I will start. So my name is Mary Koresh, and I lead the AP300 Small Modular Reactor Program at Westinghouse in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Westinghouse has been a Western Pennsylvania staple since the late 1800s and supplied the world's first commercial pressurized water reactor in 1957 in Shippingsport, PA. Today, there are more than 430 nuclear reactors in operation worldwide, and approximately half of these reactors use Westinghouse technology as the basis, giving Westinghouse the world's largest installed base of operating plants. Today, Westinghouse calls its headquarters in Pittsburgh home, employing thousands in Pennsylvania alone. In fact, 30% of our workforce is located in Pennsylvania. We've developed a very strong local nuclear supply chain across the Commonwealth with over 200 PA suppliers, including 56 specialty nuclear suppliers, creating a multi-billion-dollar industry in Pennsylvania. Westinghouse has a breadth of experience designing and deploying new plants as well as supporting the operating fleet. We have 3 nuclear fuel fabrication facilities across the world, which strengthen the nuclear fuel supply chain, and also a robust outage and maintenance service organization with engineering solutions, component manufacturing, and outage service offerings. Our new plants business, which we're talking about today, offers 2 light water advanced reactors. The AP1000 plant, which is a 1,200 megawatt reactor. 6 of those plants are currently in operation today, 2 in the US in Waynesboro, Georgia, and 4 in China. And then our small modular reactor, which is the AP300, which produces 330 megawatts and is largely based on the proven successful technology of the AP1000. The AP1000 reactor is shovel-ready, meaning we can construct tomorrow as soon as the need arises. Well, the need is here as soon as the funding is available. And it's a proven design. The AP300 SMR is currently progressing through the design phase with a credible, de-risk schedule due to its reliance on the AP1000 plant technology. The deployment of any advanced nuclear technology requires a licensed and construction-ready design, a developed component and fuel supply chain, and a robust funding strategy. From a licensing and construction perspective, both AP1000 and AP300 technologies use passive safety systems, which were just talked about, which were developed and qualified in partnership with national labs, universities, and technology vendors. The passive safety features eliminate the need for active components, as are currently in traditional plants, and also operator intervention, leading to a more robust and cost-effective design. The systems rely on gravity, natural circulation, and convection to bring the plant to a safe shutdown condition and keep that plant in a safe shutdown condition without any external or human intervention or external power for 72 hours. We have a tank that's on top of containment, which is the building where the reactor sits, and as long as that tank is refilled, the plant will be in a safe shutdown condition indefinitely because all we need is gravity. Regarding supply chain certainty, all of the major components and fuel of the AP300 are based on plant technology in operation today and do not require any first-of-a-kind testing or qualification, which can significantly impact the deployment timeline of many advanced reactors. Additionally, both technologies use proven Westinghouse fabricated fuel, which does not require any design, testing, or qualification. Sourcing up to 85% of its products locally in the United States, the AP300 leverages the proven supply chain developed for AP1000 and operating plants. This eliminates the need to qualify new vendors or encounter unforeseen risk with vendor development. Westinghouse has determined that the cost driver for many nuclear technologies is the construction and maintenance of the safety-related footprint, which is the area where the reactor and components required for the safe shutdown of the plant are located. Through the innovations applied to the AP300 by simplifying the plant design, eliminating components, and modifying the plant layout, the AP300 has the smallest safety-related footprint of many similar designs, which will reduce the upfront capital and the maintenance costs. The AP300 SMR takes into account the numerous lessons learned gleaned from the AP1000 deployment in Waynesboro, Georgia, and the multiple units in China. Westinghouse experienced construction delays and cost increases due to the fact that we were fabricating, constructing, and procuring at the same time. These learnings have been incorporated into the deployment timeline for the AP300 and add to the credibility of the cost and deployment schedule. The need for a complete design prior to construction and fabrication should not be underestimated by any advanced nuclear technology. AP300 is the only SMR based on a deployed and licensed design and will be ready for operation by the mid-2030s. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much. And I love that your kids will see it as cool and impressive that you were able to testify before the Energy Committee. Joining us online is our final testifier, Dr. Hayes. Hopefully you can hear us, and if so, please go ahead.
I can. Are you able to share my slides?
I can hear you.
Or can I share my slides?
I cannot see your slides.
The share button is not, my share button is not working.
Okay, just 1 second, please. All right, now we can see it. You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by posing a question to everybody. If you found out that yesterday you were exposed to 10 to the minus 5 joules per kilogram of radiation dose due to something you did, I would posit that would scare a lot of people. 10 to the minus 5 joules per kilogram, who knows what that is, right? Who actually has context to be able to say, is that okay? Is that bad? Should I care? Should I be terrified? You don't really know. And for most people, if I told you that 10 to the minus 5 joules per kilogram was a millirem, it's like, okay, so what? What's a millirem? Next slide. You might still not know what a millirem is, but a millirem is about what you get in one day just from all natural sources combined, from the radon in the air, from radiation coming up from the ground, cosmic radiation, the potassium in your food. All natural sources combined for a US citizen give you about 1 millirem a day. So now it's not scary anymore. But before you had context, you had no idea what dose was in terms of context. And so a millirem, hopefully you can appreciate, that can terrify a lot of people. If you were in any way afraid of 10 to the minus 5 joules per kilogram or a millirem, before I told you that that's about what you get in a day as a US citizen on average, that probably would have scared you. And so that might help you understand why people at 3 Mile Island were terrified from the event, even though the average citizen there got about 1 millirem from the entire event. The entire event gave the public about 1 millirem per person for the entire event. Now, to contextualize that further, you've heard of, I assume, the Fukushima wastewater that's being dumped into the ocean. That made international headlines. And yet, if you were to drink that water, you would have gotten less than about a millirem per year. And yet it made headlines. The Fukushima wastewater was about 10 times below what the FDA in the United States would call safe limits, safe to drink, to put in bottled water. And yet it made headlines. Again, because you don't have radiation risk in context. We call this in industry, we call this health physics. It's a discipline unto itself. So next slide. So I'm going to go up by orders of magnitude and help you understand the difference between regulation, risk, and safety, and where those come together. So if you did a coast-to-coast trip from New York to LA and back, you'd get about 5 millirem. It's about the dose you get from a panoramic X-ray. 5 millirem is not a lot. That is the EPA limit for drinking water. You can have enough radioactivity in water, say from well water or wherever you get your water from. It can have natural radioactivity that can give you up to 5 millirem per year and be legal to drink. 5 millirem. So even though that's just a coast-to-coast flight, LA and back, that does not scare people. But if you found out the radioactivity in your water violated EPA regulations, that would terrify you. That would terrify almost anybody. But that's the level that the regulations are set for drinking water. All right, next slide. We're going to keep going up. This is going to be a logarithmic scale. So 10 millirem. That is the off-site limit from the Environmental Protection Agency for effluent from a nuclear facility. So the university I work at, NC State, the most we can release in the air is 10 millirem per year. Same with a nuclear medicine facility. Same with a uranium mine. Same with any facility, 10 millirem per year. But that is the internal dose you get just from being healthy if you're a small child or a petite female. Potassium-40 is a naturally occurring radioisotope, and potassium is essential to life. All life concentrates potassium in the cells. We concentrate sodium outside the cells, but sodium potassium is concentrated in the cells. So the more cells you have, the more potassium you have, the more radioactivity you have, the more dose you have. So 10 millirem is the EPA limit for offsite airborne per year. And that's the minimum that you get from internal potassium, just to have a healthy amount of potassium in your diet. Next slide. Now, as I had said, it scales with dose. So 50 millirem is about what you get if you're like a huge muscle building guy. It's about 50 millirem is what you get from internal potassium. Now, the reason why 1 millirem is about the 1 millirem is the daily dose you get from radiation. That's because the average US citizen gets about 310 millirem. And that's population weighted. It'll be a lot higher if you're on the Colorado Plateau or up in the Rockies or something like that. But where populations are concentrated on the coasts, the dose is going to be a lot lower. So it's about 310 millirem per year. And that's why 1 millirem is about what you get in a day. Now, to contextualize that doesn't sound scary. If that's what it is required just to live, 310 millirem, 500 millirem shouldn't be too scary, but that is the threshold for an exclusion zone, like what happened at Fukushima or Chernobyl. 500 millirem, if a member of the public can get 500 millirem in the area, the EPA legally can recommend to a governor to make that area an exclusion zone. Now, to also contextualize that, because of medicine, the average US citizen gets 625 millirem in a year. So at a dose per year, less than what you already get on average, you can call that area an exclusion zone. Next slide. We're going to keep going up orders of magnitude. So 1,000 millirem, if you're old like me, you've had a stress test because I had some heart problems a couple years back and I had a stress test. That's about 1,000 millirem. When I was a boy, I got a skull fracture. I had a CT scan. That's another 1,000 millirem. If you've had a CT scan to the chest, hip, or torso, that's about 1,000 millirem. 1,000 millirem is the threshold for the EPA to recommend to a governor to evacuate. And obviously that's got to be terrifying, right? You don't usually evacuate unless there's like a forest fire or you've got like a chlorine tank explosion. But at the same dose that you would get for a CT scan, it is legal. The EPA can recommend evacuation to a governor. And that's terrifying, right? I mean, usually you think that's life or death, but it's nothing. This has no measurable medical effects, but this is the threshold for an emergency response evacuation. Next slide. 5,000 millirem. So using linear no threshold, which is a conservative model, if all radiation has a measurable effect, then at 5,000 millirem, which there is technically no measurable effect today, we've never seen anything from this, that is considered a legal dose to a radiation worker. That's considered a safe dose. Now, notice we've been going over orders of magnitude. This is a logarithmic scale we've been doing. At 5,000 millirem, that's considered a safe dose for an industrial worker, similar to OSHA standards. And we never hit that, but that's considered a safe dose to a US worker. All right, next slide. So as we keep going up, 10 rem and above, when you hit 10 rem, that's the threshold for any measurable medical effects. But as you can see on the bottom, it can keep going up. At 100 rem, that's when you can get acute radiation syndrome. And when you get above that, so 100 rem, that's 100,000 millirem. Remember, we started at 1 millirem, basically for what the average member of the public got from 3 Mile Island. And then we just went up orders of magnitude. So by the time you're in the red there on the bottom, that's where you have measurable medical effects. In the green above, to date, there have been no measurable medical effects. And we've been looking for them for about 100 years, and we still haven't seen any. And the very top of that, 1 millirem, 10 millirem, 100 millirem, that's where regulations are. And so they're orders of magnitude lower than a measurable medical effect. And that's the way we do it. It's basically how low can we get it and maintain that low with quality. So last slide, I'm ready for questions. So that's it. Thank you much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. Your first question that you posed, you couldn't see it, but there were only a few heads shaking in the audience that they knew the quantity. So,
okay.
So now we will get to questions. I will start. You all have touched on it a little bit. I think when most people hear about nuclear, if I was to go back and just chat with people in my district office or in the grocery store, their minds would go to very specific historical incidents, right? And they would have very specific fears. I think when we talk about energy, reliability and safety are always our top priorities, right? Regardless of the source. How would you describe SMRs in the most simple language but correct language that you can, that would help folks understand that what we're talking about is different from some of the pictures they have in their head? And also, what are some of the obstacles to their establishment? Would you like to start?
Sure. So I would describe nuclear in general. I'll say advanced nuclear again because SMRs, it's a particular piece of it. I would say advanced nuclear is meant to be inherently safe. And so what does that mean? It's meant to shut down by itself. You don't necessarily need somebody sitting in a control room to press a button to turn the reaction off. And so in the simplest of forms, safety, that's what it is. What was the second part of it?
What are obstacles that you see, technological or otherwise, to its establishment here in Pennsylvania?
So a lot of the technologies that we are looking at beyond light water. Light water's been operating. There's no technology associated there in terms of the design. But a lot of the other ones, molten salt, liquid metal, high temperature gas, a lot of these have been tested decades ago and at the national laboratories and operated as such. And so really technology there, again, there is plenty of data, there is a lot of data and operating experience associated with a lot of these advanced reactors. As we are in today's environment, a lot of the challenges are more business related to it. Some people will mention also regulatory perspectives as well. In the past and currently, it could take years to get an operating license, a construction permit, and then an operating license is how the Nuclear Regulatory Commission does it. And that can take years. Right now, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is going through a complete overhaul of its processes to understand where they can be more efficient, not less safe, to be clear, more efficient, to be able to move these licenses through much quicker, so 12 months, 18 months, whatever that timeline is established as. And so now then you get into that business aspect. You need funds to go forth and build these plants. It does require a significant amount of money. All first-of-a-kind technology requires a significant amount of money. As you get down to that learning curve, then you get into more predictable and expected dollars per megawatt hour. But I think the biggest challenge today is getting those financials in place, those off-taker agreements in place. And the way to do that is to continue to describe the advantages of nuclear. And that's reliable, it's resilient, it's clean. If you are an industrial sector, you can look at something like a high-temperature reactor and pull that clean heat off. And so there's lots of advantages and benefits. It's having that conversation.
I'll answer that. Thank you, Alison. So I'll start with really appreciating the scale. And so for folks who are not familiar with the technology, you can think about the existing large reactors as an 18-wheel tractor trailer and an SMR or a microreactor as a motorcycle, just to sort of appreciate the scale. But for the second part of your question, in terms of the challenges, I like to think about them in terms of what I call the 3 S's. It's the safety, security, and sustainability. Those are sort of the historical challenges that we've had in nuclear, where there are concerns about safety, but those 3 S's are also associated with the scale. So the bigger it is, the more of a concern you have with safety. And the reason for that is with the smaller reactors, starting with just the inventory, what's called the fuel or the radionuclide inventory, if something goes bad, the mass of what can escape is significantly less. Then with security, with some of these SMRs, they can be placed underground, and so that helps with security. Also, the life cycle for the fuel is significantly longer for some of them, hence there's less transportation of fuel. So with the existing reactors, every 18 months, they essentially have to be refueled, and that's always a chance for fuel being transported to be diverted. With some of these new reactors, some of them can operate for 5 years, for even 10 years, hence there's less transportation of fuel, less security concern. The third S is sustainability. And to me, that's sort of a catch-all for everything else, and that really includes things like cost. And as Mary had mentioned, with the AP1000, we had significant challenges being a first-of-a-kind, significant cost overruns. But that wasn't unique to the AP1000. Pretty much every nuclear reactor built in the U.S., because they were always first-of-a-kind reactors, we always had these challenges with cost overruns. However, with the advanced reactors, the microreactors especially, those that we expect to be built in the factory, we expect to be able to get to what's called an nth of a kind significantly faster, meaning that it's not always going to be a first of a kind. With AP300 being smaller, we expect that we'll be able to build several of them because they're smaller. We'll be able to get them out of factories and hence lower costs. So with the scale, with the smaller scale, those 3 S's are actually addressed with the small modular reactors. So safer, more secure, and more sustainable.
Thank you so much. Would you like to respond, Ms. Courage?
Sure, and I'll echo what my testifiers have said already. From a safety perspective, I mean, we talked about the passive safety systems. The plants that are in operation today are safe, right? With every event, and we talked about the releases, right? The releases weren't catastrophic, right, in most of the situations, but with every event, we've learned. The industry has made changes to human performance, to procedures, to regulations, to requirements about the instrumentation that should be installed, requirements about the operations in the control room. So we've adapted, we've created new lesson learned sharing mechanisms, and so the industry has grown from a safety perspective. The operating plants now, they're safe, they have active components, so pumps, valves, operator action that's required, things that can break, and the new technologies remove those things. So you're reducing cost by eliminating the active components, and you're also relying on just gravity or convection or other factors that are naturally occurring to keep the plant safe. From a challenges perspective, to Allison's point on funding, right? So these are mega projects. They require a lot of funds, and there will be inherent first-of-a-kind challenges, things that the technology developers don't know yet, as we experienced on AP 1000. Now we're taking those lessons and we're applying them. I spoke to the need for a complete design before you start construction, and that's critical because we were fabricating a design that wasn't done. So that caused a lot of rework. That caused a lot of increased costs. We were constructing. We had to rip out rebar and put different rebar in due to legislation changes because the project took so long. So that need to finish the design before you start constructing is critical. And that's why these timelines that are out there for deployment need to be taken with a grain of salt, because there will be first-of-a-kind challenges. And that's where the financial backing comes in, where it's important for legislation, it's important for tax credits, for incentives, for low-cost funding from the government, really, and private investors to help with overcoming those first-of-a-kind challenges. Because once you get to that nth of a kind, these will be easy to construct and easy to fabricate. It's just getting to that nth of a kind that we need to get to.
Thank you so much. In just a moment, we'll go to Chairman Causer. I just want to note that also joining us online are Representative Ingalls, Boyd, and Rusnak, and joining us in person are Representatives Serrato and McAndrew. Chairman Causer?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your testimony. Question that I have is, can you delineate the average and maximum output from these facilities?
Yeah, so our AP 1000 is 1,200 megawatts. That is a large reactor. It's modular. It's deployed. It's designed. It's ready to go. And it's an
maximum, or
yes. That is the electric output, yes. And then as you scale down, you get to the small modular reactors. So those are generally defined as around 300 megawatts. And then you get to and these are modular. Some of them are factory built. They can be scaled up, so you can start with one and then add on as energy demand increases in the area. They're typically applied and used in locations where there's not enough land for a large reactor, or you don't have the upfront capital that's required for a large reactor, or the grid or the infrastructure isn't there. So that's where you turn to small modular reactors. Then there's microreactors, which are below 100 megawatts, and those are typically used for locations where it's hard to get to, where there may not be a grid at all. So we looked at them like in far north Canada, in Alaska, in coal mining communities, on nuclear bases. So ones that you don't need to connect to the grid, you just use the energy produced from these microreactors to support whatever you're needing.
And typically, how long would it take to build one of these facilities, including the NRC approvals? You know, what is the timeline? Should you have the money? I understand the challenges that you were previously speaking of, but what would the timeline be?
Yeah, so the timelines that are published now vary. I would say for the AP 1000, it's designed, it's proven, it's qualified. It takes 5 years to construct, and then 3 to 2 years to buy long lead material. So 7 to 8 years to deploy from the time you say go. So the AP300, we're saying it'll be ready by mid-2030s, so 10, 12 years. And that's for a design that's based on a proven technology. Some of the other technologies out there, they're saying that they will be ready to deploy by early 2030s. But the thing to keep in mind is some of these technologies are new technologies from a commercial operation perspective. Allison mentioned that they've been used out there in Navy or military applications, but there's a lot of qualification and testing and potential risks that need to be considered as you're deploying a new first-of-a-kind technology. So piloting programs, qualification of vendors, qualification of the actual technology itself, proving out and getting the technology licensed, and then also designing for constructability. What we found on the AP1000 was that only 5% of the design needs to be done in order to get a licensed reactor. So the rest comes into play when you're looking at, can I construct it? Because when you're looking at licensing, you're looking at, is it safe to operate? And then the construction is, can I put the pieces together to where it works? So the deployment timeline is a great question, but I would say mid-2030s is where would be realistic.
Thank you. Would you folks care to
Can I jump in as
offer
well?
additional?
Yeah, absolutely. Just adding a little more information. It depends is the answer, unfortunately, as it always is. When you're looking at, I'm going to touch on kind of the smaller scale reactors, typically called microreactors, because I think the timeline differs just a little bit, and it also leans into some of the work that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is also working on as well. And so it depends, are you building a building on site and then building the reactor along with it, or are you building a reactor in a factory and shipping it to site and then, in the simplest of terms, turning it on? It's not that simple, but essentially what it is. So there's one caveat around it. Another thing is that a lot of the microreactors are being designed to be built fully in the factory and then put on a truck and then shipped to site. So the construction associated with that plant is significantly reduced. And to Mary's point, the timelines are going to vary as we move through this process. But there are some criteria that a lot of these vendors are working towards to see how many reactors they can get through their factory and how much amount of time. And many of them are looking at tens per year. And so it should be a kind of consistent cycle once they get that going and once they get that factory set up to be able to turn these things out a little bit more faster than some of the larger projects that we're looking at. And then on the timeline side of the house as well, we have a number of projects. I mentioned the 11 projects that were selected in my opening remarks. There is a goal in the executive orders to turn at least 3 reactors critical by July 4th, 2026. That is a goal, but all 11 of these projects are working towards that goal, and many of them are making significant amount of progress. I'm sure you've seen headlines in terms of them breaking ground to site their reactor there. We have one reactor that's looking to use Idaho National Laboratory's test bed going in this spring, and so they'll turn their system on this spring. That is not the full plant, that is the reactor, but to Mary's point, it's moving in a little bit of a quicker timeline as you look to the smaller scale reactors. And I'll pass, I think Shola wants to mention.
I'll just add to the first question regarding the output. So there's the thermal output and the electric output, and I just want to make that distinction because some users only require the thermal. So if it's for process heat, which is typically about 3 times the electric. So if you have a 1,000 megawatt electric reactor, you could get 3,000 or more thermal. And for a lot of the applications, especially for the smaller reactors, they're actually looking at industrial applications, so they would directly be using the heat without the need for a turbine, which actually drops down the output to electric.
And I will add just one more point that, the deployment, we're looking at 2030s, right? But the legislation, the funding, support, and the incentives need to happen ASAP. Because of the development timeline, and it's critical to enable the development to occur by the 2030s.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this committee is anticipating having a voting meeting tomorrow on House Bill 2017, with a bill that would give DEP discretion to lower fees for SMRs, and that is Representative Jural's bill. And so I will turn it to him for the next question.
Good morning. I'd like to first thank the panel for your expert testimony. My question is for Dr. Talabi. By updating Pennsylvania's fee structure under this bill, how does that affect workforce development and job creation within the FSMR supply chain in the Commonwealth?
Excellent question. So first of all, I'll start with what the opportunity is. The DOE conducted a study that estimates that there's an opportunity for about 375,000 new jobs coming into this sector. We currently have about 100,000, right? So significant growth opportunity there, and that's just on the commercial side. You may say, looking at the different parts of the U.S., why PA? Why would the jobs potentially come here? I think it's because of that which we already have. There's obviously we've had historical leadership in nuclear with the first commercial reactor. We have significant institutions such as Penn State University that has nuclear engineering programs. We have the industrial sector with companies like Westinghouse. We have also a significant supply chain. So we already have the opportunity here that some of the newcomer states like Wyoming, et cetera, that are already constructing new plants don't have. We have that historical leadership that we have the opportunity to reclaim. So I think addressing the why would these jobs potentially come here versus other areas, and why should we invest in workforce development? I think it's because we have the opportunity to leverage the existing infrastructure that we have in terms of people, processes, and existing infrastructure. Specifically in terms of where these investments can go, I think it's understanding that for workforce development, a lot of it also has to do with planning. So we often talk about the need for the jobs, but there's a question about when we will see these jobs, where, what types of jobs, and there's studies now that are being conducted. Actually, I'm working on a study that's funded by the Appalachia Regional Commission to address those questions. It's understanding that for the small modular reactors, the microreactors, the fact that we have this new technology, we're actually going to be seeing some new job titles. Some of those job titles include things like digital engineers and also supporting the supply chain to be able to have the expertise to be able to do nuclear work. So we have a significant supply chain here that can do even some heavy forgings, but can they do it in the nuclear sector? Can they do it to meet nuclear grade? So it's understanding also the opportunity to help transition displaced workers from, say, the coal industry, where we could have a welder who has worked, for 20 years welding in the coal industry, now displaced for no fault of theirs. How can we help them upscale their skills so that they can be a welder in the nuclear industry? So there are a lot of those programs now with institutes such as Penn State University that are looking at how we can, again, sort of leverage understanding that which PA already has, making some additional investments so that we can be prepared, be one of the front leading states to be able to attract these jobs.
How far behind is Pennsylvania when you compare them to other states?
So what I'll say is, and this is public information and public knowledge, that we do have a lot of states that are ahead in terms of at least the investments that they've made, the announcements that we've heard, the fact that we've seen some construction already started. So in places like Wyoming, we have TerraPower that's broken ground there, and they're starting a construction of a new nuclear plant, and they had no prior nuclear infrastructure there, right? We have Texas that has committed several $100 million to support new build. We have Tennessee that is doing a tremendous job there with also providing the infrastructure to support the supply chain there. So I would say that probably about half a dozen states that have been more aggressive, to be honest. But Pennsylvania has that opportunity that they don't have in the existing infrastructure. So for us, we're not starting from scratch. It's really about identifying the assets that we have, leveraging those, and really accelerating to catch up. And I think we can do it in another year or so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Representative Stambaugh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everybody, for being here. You have answered a lot of questions for me. Two things with, the current nuclear fleet, being, water-cooled reactors, there's a refueling cycle, generally 18 months to 2 years. Is there a refueling cycle with these smaller modular reactors? And if so, what happens to the waste? Because that's always been sort of the Achilles heel of the nuclear industry is, they're site storing all this nuclear waste. It's been piling up since the 60s. And, as of present time, can't even, they're supposed to go to Yucca Mountain, Nevada. And of course, that project's been held up, and we need 2 or 3 Yucca Mountains today to take care of all this waste. So just wondered what happens with the waste then? Would it just be site stored then on site? So.
Yeah, let me take this question if I can. This is actually this is one of my specialties. I actually teach nuclear waste management. Let me put this in context to start off with. Since the 1970s, the United States has got about 20% of its electricity from nuclear. That's a lot of energy, right? For a manufacturing powerhouse, the largest economy on the planet, 20% of our electricity has come from nuclear. And all of the spent fuel from all of that energy would not fill up a single football field above 10 meters high. It's just such energy density that the amount of waste is incredibly small. Now, yes, Yucca Mountain did have issues. They did not follow the pattern that was taken at the waste isolation pilot plant. We actually do have a licensed geological repository for nuclear waste. It's only for transuranic waste, which is basically plutonium contaminated waste there in southeast New Mexico. And the Department of Energy is now following this collaboration-based siting approach so that it can be safely stored. The material, the casts are incredibly robust. They're virtually indestructible. But the point is that doesn't mean that people are not terrified by them. Like I showed you in my presentation earlier, it's easy to be terrified for negligible risk if you don't understand it. And nuclear science and technology, it's not a trivial thing. It's not rocket science, but it is nuclear science. And so it's hard to expect people to really understand that, because normally we require them to go through a college program to actually understand those kinds of things. And so the risk isn't large, but it's perceived to be large. And it simply comes down to following the process that other nations have done. Canada has been able to successfully find a site, and they've also done the same in Northern Europe. So we are making progress, but it's obviously, like you said, sir, not anywhere near where it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. I was also curious just about the refueling cycle. I assume these things have a longer time till they need refueled. Years, from what I understand. I was just curious what that was, and
So you're right. The existing fleet is anywhere from 18 to 24 months, depending on the technology, and they are mostly trying to get to 24 months. As you get into advanced reactors and look at utilizing different fuel types, like that high-assay, low-enriched uranium I mentioned, there are various timelines, anywhere from just keeping to the 24 months, 5 years, 10 years. There's been up to some 15 years as well. And that goes to the description of utilizing microreactors in kind of remote locations. You can set it there, operate it for a number of years, and then bring it home when you're done. That refueling process varies from vendor to vendor. Do you refuel on site? Do you bring that whole reactor back to a refueling factory, send out a new one? So that differs from vendor to vendor, but yeah, you're looking at a significantly longer timeline.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions. Representative Armanini?
First, thank you all for the excellent explanation of nuclear. I know I learned a tremendous amount today from how you explain things, that we really do not have the risk that we've been imposed by, quote, the media throwing out at us. Good point here, where media is not always the truth. My question is, we asked Pennsylvania, we're behind. with this great bill that we're going to vote on tomorrow from Representative Jarrell. This is a start. What other legislation do you need from us to present Pennsylvania to get us to the front in running this, so we can have our trades guys start telling us we're breaking ground, we're moving forward, we're actually going to start building this. We all know of the electric shortage that they're saying now 2032 is the doomsday, that we will have blackouts. How do we get ahead from your time frame that you need to make sure we can have nuclear in this variety of energy sources that we need to be an electric powerhouse and get back to lead the way for electricity, not only in Pennsylvania, but for our nation?
Okay. Great question. And it's like, okay, where do we start? So, but I'll start with workforce development. I think that when I look at the probably one of the hardest parts of this challenge to address for any region is getting the people that we need to properly develop, design, deploy, operate, maintain these reactors. One thing about nuclear is that a lot of us that are in the industry didn't intend to be in nuclear. So I sort of stumbled into nuclear. I've been in conferences where I've asked that question, and maybe less than 10% of the people actually say they plan to be in the industry. The reason I mention that is when we look at getting more folks into the industry, if we look at the different cohorts, we can actually start even from the K through 12 level, looking at 2-year colleges, 4-year professional degrees, working folks, working professionals, and actually do more of career awareness. There's a career awareness aspect, looking at the institutions that we have, supporting universities like Penn State that already have nuclear workforce development programs. I think following the federal funding that's been provided for workforce development and providing state-level matching funds would be an opportunity, and that's something that Tennessee is doing, where they actually have a pool of funds that's available to match federal funding for nuclear workforce development. I would suggest that we talk to some of the stakeholders in Pennsylvania that are working on this already. Again, I've mentioned Penn State a few times. They do have a significant effort there that's being led by Doug Wolf, the Assistant Vice President for research, and some of those existing initiatives, if they can be further supported, would be a good start.
Thank you.
And just briefly, if you would. Did you have something you wanted to add? Okay. Thank you for that question. Rep. Jarrell? Sure, go ahead if you would.
When you look around the Commonwealth and you talk about energy costs and demand, it's rising, I think this is a no-brainer. I think we should do this sooner than later, so I just want to thank you guys again for your testimony, and thanks.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee staffs who, from both sides, who worked so hard on this legislation. I do agree that we're in an affordability crisis right now. If we're not in an energy crisis, if people want to dispute that, we're certainly right on the cusp of it. And so I think given the huge energy needs that we have as a Commonwealth, we would be wise to try to bring in as much new technology as possible. Great food for thought on additional things we could do, and I agree that I think this legislation we'll vote on tomorrow is a very important first piece to try to bring this sort of safe, sustainable, reliable technology right here to Pennsylvania. So thank you. Chairman Causer, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank our testifiers, both here in the room and participating remotely. The information that you've presented both in person and your testimony is very valuable, and I do think that we can work in a bipartisan manner to support additional nuclear energy here in the Commonwealth. So I look forward to working with all of you to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you again to our testifiers in person and online. It is 11:31, and this meeting of the House Energy Committee is adjourned.